close your eyes for just a moment and allow the noise of today to slowly fade into the distance. Imagine that it is the year 1287. The sun has already disappeared beyond rolling hills, and the last traces of orange light have faded from the evening sky. A cool breeze drifts through narrow streets lined with timber-framed houses. Tiny candles flicker behind small windows. Somewhere nearby, the slow ringing of a cathedral bell echoes across the rooftops. You have traveled back more than 700 years. There are no phones, no electric lights, no cars passing outside your window. Only quiet footsteps on uneven cobblestones, the gentle crackle of fireplaces, and the soft rustling of wool cloaks brushing against the cold night air. Tonight, we are stepping into one of the strangest chapters of medieval life. Not great battles, not mighty kings, not famous castles. Instead, we are exploring something far more personal. Love. Or at least, what people believed love should look like during the Middle Ages. Because dating, as we know it today, simply did not exist. There were no coffee shops, no romantic dinners, no text messages, no dating apps, and certainly no swiping left or right. Instead, young men and women followed customs that now seem almost unbelievable. Some believed carrying certain herbs would make another person fall hopelessly in love. Others thought a dream scene on the right night could reveal the face of a future husband or wife. Some advice sounded strangely sweet, while other traditions now seem completely bizarre. And yet, to the people living in medieval Europe, these customs were perfectly normal. They shaped relationships. They influenced marriages. And sometimes, they changed entire families forever. So tonight, we will quietly wander through forgotten villages, peaceful castles, ancient churches, bustling marketplaces, and hidden gardens, searching for the curious advice people once followed in the name of romance. Along the way, you may discover that many modern dating traditions have roots stretching much farther back than you ever imagined. Some stories may surprise you. Some may make you smile. And a few might leave you wondering how anyone ever believed them. But there is no need to stay fully awake. As your breathing slows, as your blankets grow warmer, simply allow these old stories to become gentle companions for the night. I'm Kushi, and this is Sleepy History. Now, let us begin our quiet journey. Before we meet the young couples of medieval Europe, take a slow look around. Imagine yourself standing beside a narrow stone road just after sunset. The air smells faintly of damp earth mixed with wood smoke drifting from nearby homes. A horse pulls a small wagon across uneven stones. Its hooves create a slow, steady, comforting rhythm. Somewhere in the distance, an owl calls into the darkness. The village itself is small. Perhaps only a few hundred people live here. Everyone knows everyone else. Secrets rarely remain hidden for long. News spreads quickly. And when it comes to romance, privacy is almost impossible. A young man cannot simply invite someone to spend time together alone. Doing so would attract curious eyes almost immediately. Parents watch carefully. Neighbors gossip constantly. Priests remind everyone about proper behavior. Love is rarely considered a private matter. Instead, it belongs to families, communities, and sometimes even the church. Marriage is not simply about two people choosing one another. It is often about land, money, status, alliances, inheritance, even survival. Yet despite these serious expectations, people still fell in love. Young hearts still raced. Shy smiles still appeared across crowded marketplaces. Quiet glances still met during church services. Hope, as always, found its own way. Imagine a village festival held during early summer. Long wooden tables stand beneath colorful banners. Fresh bread fills woven baskets. Children laugh while chasing one another through open fields. Musicians play simple melodies using wooden flutes and small drums. Older villagers sit together sharing stories from long ago. This is one of the few occasions where young, unmarried people can actually meet. Not completely alone, but close enough to exchange a smile, perhaps a brief conversation, maybe even a dance. Although even dancing carries rules. A young woman must remain respectful. A young man must avoid appearing too eager. Every movement is quietly observed by family members. One awkward mistake may become tomorrow's favorite piece of village gossip. As the evening grows darker, tiny lanterns glow beneath wooden shelters. Music continues softly. Laughter rises into the warm summer air. Somewhere across the gathering, two strangers notice each other for the very first time. Neither knows it yet, but everyone around them is already paying attention. Because in medieval society, love rarely belonged only to the couple. It belonged to everyone watching. Take another slow breath. Imagine the gentle sound of leaves moving above you. Feel the cool evening air resting against old stone walls. History often feels loud, filled with wars, kings, battles, and great discoveries. But most people who lived during the Middle Ages experienced something much quieter. They worried about ordinary things. Harvests, weather, family, faith, friendship, and yes, love. Their stories rarely appear in history books. Yet these ordinary lives tell us far more about the past than the lives of famous rulers ever could. Tonight, those quiet voices return, and they have much to share. Our story begins with one of the biggest misunderstandings about medieval romance. Many people imagine knights riding across kingdoms to rescue beautiful maidens before confessing everlasting love beneath castle towers. It certainly makes for wonderful movies, but reality was usually much less dramatic. For most ordinary people, finding a husband or wife involved practical decisions rather than grand romance. A farmer needed someone capable of helping manage land. A blacksmith hoped for a hardworking family. A merchant looked for reliable connections. Marriage often meant stability before affection. Love sometimes came later. Sometimes it never came at all. That may sound sad to modern ears. Yet medieval people often viewed marriage differently. They believed lasting respect, shared responsibilities, and religious devotion could slowly grow into something deeper. Romantic excitement was considered uncertain. Practical partnerships lasted much longer. Still, young people dreamed. Old poems tell us that boys nervously watched girls collecting water from village wells. Girls quietly admired young apprentices learning skilled trades. Long before anyone spoke openly, eyes met across crowded streets. A smile lingered. A heart quietly hoped. One popular piece of medieval advice suggested that patience revealed true affection. If someone genuinely cared for you, they would remain respectful. They would not rush. Instead, they would demonstrate honesty through consistent actions over many months. Surprisingly, this particular advice still feels familiar today. Not every medieval belief sounds strange, but others certainly do. Some believed carrying rosemary improved romantic fortune. Others tied ribbons around small bundles of herbs before village festivals. Certain flowers were thought to attract love. Others supposedly protected against heartbreak. Whether these traditions truly worked is another question entirely. But belief itself held remarkable power. People found comfort in rituals, especially when facing uncertain emotions. Imagine a young woman quietly placing lavender beneath her pillow before going to sleep. She has heard older women say that dreams appearing that night may reveal the face of her future husband. She closes her eyes with quiet excitement. Morning arrives. Did she truly dream of someone? Or did hope simply paint familiar faces inside her imagination? No one really knows. Yet traditions like these survived for generations. Not because they always worked, but because people desperately wanted them to. Across medieval Europe, love mixed easily with mystery. Religion existed alongside folklore. Faith walked beside superstition. Daily life contained both careful prayer and whispered old beliefs passed from grandparents to grandchildren. Many families saw no contradiction. Both belonged naturally within everyday life. And perhaps that combination made romance feel even more magical. Imagine walking through an early morning marketplace. Fresh vegetables fill wooden stalls. Fishmongers call quietly to passing customers. Blacksmiths hammer glowing iron. The smell of warm bread drifts through cool morning air. Among all this activity, a young man notices someone selling tiny handmade charms. Each promises good fortune, protection, health, or love. He spends one precious coin, not because he completely believes it, but because hope, even small hope, can feel worth almost any price. People have always searched for little signs that happiness might be possible. That desire has never really changed. As the years passed, countless medieval romances quietly unfolded beneath ordinary skis. Some ended happily. Others disappeared into history without leaving names behind. Yet every smile, every nervous conversation, every hopeful glance reminds us that people 700 years ago were not so different from us after all. Their clothes were different. Their homes were different. Their beliefs were often different. But the wish to be understood, to be appreciated, to find companionship, has always belonged to the human heart. And this is only the beginning of our journey. Because the truly unusual dating advice, the forgotten customs, and the strangest beliefs about love are still waiting for us just ahead. But the most curious traditions were yet to come, and we will discover them together in the next part of our story. Our journey continues as the night grows a little quieter. The village has settled into silence. Most windows now glow with only a single candle. The day's work is finished. The animals have been fed. The marketplace stands empty beneath the pale light of the moon. Only the occasional sound of distant footsteps echoes through the narrow streets. If you are already beginning to feel sleepy, that is perfectly all right. Simply let these old stories drift gently through your thoughts, like soft clouds moving across a peaceful night sky. Tonight, we continue exploring one of the most unusual parts of medieval life, the strange advice people followed when searching for love. Some of it sounds surprisingly thoughtful. Some of it seems almost impossible to believe. Yet hundreds of years ago, these customs were accepted with complete seriousness. To understand them, we must first remember that medieval people viewed the world very differently than we do today. They believed nature carried hidden messages. Dreams contained important signs. Animals could symbolize good fortune or bad luck. Even the changing seasons seemed connected to matters of the heart. Love was not simply an emotion. It was often seen as something influenced by heaven, the earth, and mysterious forces that no one could fully explain. Imagine a young woman living in England during the late 13th century. She wakes before sunrise. Her family owns a small farm surrounded by open fields. Every morning begins the same way. She gathers water from a nearby well, feeds chickens wandering around the yard, helps bake dark loaves of bread inside a stone oven. Her life is filled with work. There is little free time. Yet even during ordinary days, her thoughts occasionally drift toward someone she noticed during Sunday church. Perhaps he smiled politely. Perhaps he helped an elderly neighbor carry firewood. Perhaps she knows almost nothing about him. Still, her imagination quietly fills in the rest, without photographs, without letters exchanged every day. People often fell in love with very small details: a kind voice, gentle manners, patience, respect. These simple qualities became surprisingly meaningful. Now imagine that an older woman in the village notices her growing curiosity. She quietly offers advice passed down through generations. "Do not chase after affection," she says. "Allow your kindness to be seen instead." To modern ears, that may sound like ordinary wisdom, but medieval advice often continued in much stranger directions. The woman reaches into a woven basket. Inside are fresh sprigs of rosemary. She ties them together with a small piece of linen thread. Then she explains that carrying rosemary during festivals may encourage faithful love. No scientific evidence supported such beliefs. Even in medieval times, not everyone accepted them. But traditions like these traveled from village to village for centuries. People found comfort in rituals, especially when the future felt uncertain. Another belief involved apples. Today, an apple seems like nothing more than an ordinary fruit. But in many parts of medieval Europe, apples quietly became symbols of romance. Some young women believed that carefully peeling an apple in one long strip without breaking the peel could reveal clues about future marriage. When the peel finally dropped to the floor, people searched for shapes that resembled letters. Those letters were sometimes believed to represent the name of a future husband. Was it accurate? Almost certainly not. But imagine the excitement. Several friends gathered together during autumn, a basket filled with freshly picked apples resting nearby, laughter filling a warm kitchen. Each girl carefully turning her knife, hopping not to snap the delicate peel. Then everyone leaning forward to see what shape appeared on the stone floor. Perhaps the greatest magic was not the prediction itself, but the shared moment of hope. Humans have always enjoyed imagining what tomorrow might bring. As the seasons changed, another curious custom appeared. Spring festivals were especially important. After long winters filled with cold winds and short days, villages celebrated the return of warmth. Fields slowly turned green again. Flowers appeared beside quiet streams. Birdsong filled the morning air. Many believed spring was nature's own reminder that new beginnings were possible. It became one of the few times when young, unmarried people could spend more time together under the watchful eyes of family members. Games were organized. Music echoed through open fields. Simple dances lasted until sunset. Yet even dancing followed unwritten rules. A young man was expected to approach politely. His movements should remain respectful. He should never appear boastful or impatient. Confidence mattered. But humility mattered even more. One careless joke, one rude comment, or one disrespectful action could damage a person's reputation for years. In a small village, memories lasted a very long time, sometimes longer than the people themselves. That reputation became one of the most valuable things anyone possessed, unlike today, where people can move easily between cities. Most medieval villagers spent nearly their entire lives in the same community. Everyone remembered childhood mistakes. Everyone knew family histories. Trust was built slowly and broken quickly. Because of this, one common piece of dating advice was surprisingly practical: treat every person with kindness, not because romance was guaranteed, but because everyone you met would almost certainly remain part of your life for many years. It is interesting how advice from hundreds of years ago can still sound meaningful today. Not every medieval tradition feels completely foreign. Others, however, become much stranger. In parts of Europe, some people believed birds carried messages about romance. Seeing certain birds during particular seasons was thought to predict marriage. A pair of swans swimming together represented lifelong loyalty. A singing robin near one's home could symbolize joyful news. A dove represented peace and faithful affection. These beautiful ideas reflected something deeper. People spent far more time outdoors than we do today. Nature surrounded every moment of daily life, without television, without computers, without electric lights. The changing world outside became the greatest storyteller of all. Clouds, trees, animals, stars, everything seemed filled with meaning. Another unusual belief involved mirrors. Although mirrors were rare and expensive, polished pieces of metal sometimes reflected enough light to reveal a person's face. Some believed staring into a reflection by candlelight while quietly thinking about a loved one could strengthen emotional connections. Whether anyone truly believed this, or simply enjoyed the peaceful ritual, history cannot always tell us. Many traditions survive without leaving complete explanations behind. That mystery makes them even more fascinating. Imagine standing alone beside a quiet window outside. Snow falls gently across empty streets. A candle flickers softly. The polished metal mirror reflects dancing golden light for just a few peaceful minutes. The entire world feels still. Perhaps rituals like these helped people slow down. Perhaps they simply created moments of calm during difficult lives. Either way, their quiet beauty remains. As we continue wandering through medieval Europe, one truth becomes clearer. People searched constantly for certainty. Life was unpredictable. Harvests sometimes failed. Disease appeared without warning. Travel remained dangerous. Winters felt endless, when so much remained outside human control. Small traditions offered comfort: a simple flower, a lucky ribbon, a familiar prayer, a shared belief. These became tiny lights in uncertain times. Love itself often felt just as unpredictable. No charm could guarantee happiness. No dream could promise a perfect future. Yet people continued hopping, generation after generation, century after century. Perhaps hope has always been humanity's oldest tradition. Take another slow breath. Notice how quiet the village has become. Only the wind moves now. The candles burn lower. The stars shine above dark rooftops. Somewhere inside one small cottage, a young man quietly wonders whether he should speak to someone after church next Sunday. Across the village, a young woman places rosemary beside her bedside before drifting to sleep. Neither knows what tomorrow will bring. Neither realizes they have become part of history. Their names have long been forgotten, but their hopes, their quiet dreams, and their search for companionship still echo softly across the centuries. Yet these gentle customs were only the beginning, because hidden beyond the peaceful villages were stranger traditions, odd courtship tests, unusual beauty rituals, and romantic beliefs so peculiar that even people living at the time sometimes question them. Those remarkable stories are waiting for us in the next chapter of our quiet journey. As our journey continues, the night has grown deeper. The village sleeps beneath a quiet blanket of darkness. Only the moon watches over the winding roads, the small cottages, and the silent fields stretching beyond the edge of town. The last candle in many homes has almost burned away. A gentle breeze carries the scent of damp grass and distant pine trees. Somewhere far away, a dog barks once. Then everything becomes still again. If your eyes are beginning to feel heavy, you are exactly where you should be. There is no need to remember every detail. Simply let these stories drift through your imagination as softly as the night wind itself. Tonight, we continue exploring the wonderfully strange world of medieval romance. And now, we arrive at one of its most unusual chapters: beauty. Not beauty as we understand it today, but beauty through medieval eyes. Because hundreds of years ago, the qualities people considered attractive were often very different from modern ideals. Some customs seem surprisingly familiar. Others are almost impossible to imagine. Let us begin with one of the most unexpected trends: a high forehead. Today, few people spend much time thinking about the height of their forehead. But during parts of the Middle Ages, especially among wealthy families, a broad, smooth forehead was considered a sign of elegance and refinement. To achieve this fashionable look, some women carefully removed small hairs along the front of the hairline. Others covered much of their hair beneath delicate veils or linen head coverings, allowing only the forehead to remain fully visible. Portraits painted during the late medieval period often show this style quite clearly. To modern viewers, it may appear unusual, but to those living at the time, it represented grace, dignity, and noble character. Fashion has always changed with each generation. What one century celebrates, another quietly forgets. Clothing also carried important messages. A young man hoping to impress a future bride did not simply wear his finest clothes for comfort. His clothing spoke before he ever said a word. Well-made wool suggested steady income. Clean boots showed discipline. A carefully repaired cloak suggested responsibility rather than wastefulness. Bright colors could indicate wealth, since many dyes were costly to produce. Even a simple belt or polished buckle might quietly communicate family status. Without speaking, people introduced themselves through appearance. Imagine arriving at a village celebration. Colorful banners move gently in the afternoon breeze. Music drifts across the open square. Families gather around long wooden tables. Children chase one another between market stalls. Nearby, several young men stand nervously, pretending not to notice the young women walking past. Each has chosen his very best clothing, not because fashion magazines told him what to wear, but because first impressions mattered just as much then as they do now. One polite conversation could become the beginning of something lasting, of course. Not every attempt succeeded. Sometimes nervousness made people speak too quickly. Sometimes someone tripped while trying to appear confident. Sometimes conversations simply faded into awkward silence. Even medieval romance included embarrassing moments. Human nature changes far less than clothing styles. Another fascinating tradition involved gifts. Today we might give flowers, chocolates, or jewelry. During the Middle Ages, gifts often reflected daily life. A beautifully embroidered handkerchief, a carefully carved wooden spoon, a ribbon woven by hand, fresh herbs gathered from a family garden, a small pouch filled with fragrant lavender. These gifts required time rather than great wealth. Creating something with one's own hands carried deep meaning. Hours of careful work became a quiet expression of affection. Imagine a young woman sitting beside a window during winter. Snow falls gently outside. Firelight dances across wooden walls. Patiently, she embroiders tiny flowers onto a square piece of linen. Each careful stitch takes only a few seconds, yet the entire gift may require many evenings to complete. Every thread carries silent hope. Will he appreciate it? Will he understand what it means? History cannot answer. But countless handmade gifts quietly connected people long before factories existed. Flowers themselves also carried special meanings. Although the famous language of flowers became much more popular centuries later, medieval people already associated certain plants with emotions and virtues. Rosemary symbolized remembrance. Violets suggested humility. Lilies represented purity. Oak leaves reflected strength and endurance. Carrying flowers was not merely decorative. Many believed nature reflected deeper truths about character. Perhaps this explains why medieval gardens were often filled with both useful herbs and beautiful blossoms. Practical life and quiet symbolism grew side by side. Then we come to one of the stranger pieces of dating advice. Some believed that seeing your future husband or wife in a dream required following a very specific routine before sleeping. The exact instructions varied from village to village. In one place, a person might place herbs beneath a pillow. Elsewhere, they might avoid speaking after sunset. Another tradition suggested eating a small piece of bread before bed without drinking any water. The dream that followed was believed to contain hidden clues. Of course, dreams are mysterious. Even today, scientists continue studying why we dream and what purpose dreams may serve. But medieval people rarely separated dreams from everyday life. To them, dreams could carry warnings, guidance, or hope. A peaceful dream might brighten someone's entire week. A frightening one could inspire long conversations with family members or local priests. The sleeping mind felt almost as important as the waking one. Imagine lying beneath heavy wool blankets, outside. Rain taps softly against a wooden roof. The fire has almost gone out. Only glowing embers remain. You slowly close your eyes, believing that somewhere within tonight's dreams, Your future may quietly reveal itself, whether true or not. The belief itself brought comfort. Another custom involved singing. Many medieval love songs were surprisingly gentle. Rather than dramatic declarations, they often spoke of patience, longing, kindness, and admiration from afar. Traveling musicians carried these songs between villages. Some melodies survived for generations, others disappeared forever. A young man with a pleasant singing voice often attracted attention during festivals. Music allowed emotions to be expressed without speaking directly. Sometimes a simple melody communicated feelings that words could not. Even today, a familiar song can remind us of someone from long ago. Perhaps that has always been true across Europe, from England to France, from Germany to Italy. Music quietly accompanied countless love stories as the evening celebrations ended. Young couples walked home with their families. No one wandered alone together beneath moonlit skies. Social rules remained strict. Parents stayed close. Neighbors noticed everything. Respectability mattered deeply. Although these customs may seem restrictive today, they reflected a society where family reputation influenced nearly every opportunity in life. Trust was built carefully. Honor protected entire households. Individual choices affected everyone, whether we agree with those values or not. Understanding them helps us better understand the people themselves. History rarely fits neatly into modern expectations. Every age creates its own rules. Every generation believes many of its customs are perfectly ordinary. Only centuries later do they begin to seem unusual. Perhaps future generations will one day look back at our own dating traditions with the very same curiosity. They may wonder about smartphones, dating apps, online profiles, or first dates in crowded coffee shops. History has a gentle way of reminding us that normal is always changing. As the night grows even quieter, our peaceful journey continues. The stars shine above the rooftops. A cool mist settles across the fields, inside warm cottages. Families sleep peacefully while tomorrow's work quietly waits with the sunrise. Yet hidden beyond these ordinary evenings, there existed stranger beliefs still, curious matchmaking customs, ancient love fortunes, and mysterious rituals performed under the light of the full moon. Those forgotten traditions have waited hundreds of years to be remembered, and they will quietly reveal themselves in the next part of our story. As we continue our quiet journey, the night has become wonderfully still. The village paths are now empty. The marketplace sleeps beneath the silver light of the moon. Only a gentle wind moves through the branches of ancient oak trees, carrying the scent of damp earth and distant fireplaces. Somewhere beyond the fields, a church bell softly marks another passing hour. Its slow echo disappears into the darkness. If you are resting comfortably beneath your blankets, allow your breathing to become slower. There is nowhere you need to be, nothing you need to remember. Simply let these forgotten stories carry you gently through the night. Our journey now brings us to one of the most curious parts of medieval romance: the people who helped decide who should marry whom. Today, many couples meet through friends, at school, at work, or even online. But for much of the Middle Ages, finding a husband or wife was rarely left to chance. Families played an important role. Neighbors quietly shared opinions. Village elders often offered advice. And sometimes, there was another person working quietly behind the scenes: the matchmaker. The medieval matchmaker was rarely a mysterious stranger. More often, it was an older woman who knew nearly every family in the village. She remembered who owned good farmland. She knew whose son was hardworking. She knew which daughters were known for kindness, patience, or skill at managing a household. She also knew every family disagreement, every old rivalry, and every forgotten promise, in a world where almost everyone stayed in the same community for life. Information became a valuable kind of wealth. Imagine an elderly woman walking slowly through the village with a woven basket resting on her arm. She greets every neighbor by name. She pauses to ask about someone's harvest. She smiles at children playing beside a well. To an outsider, she simply appears friendly. But quietly, she is gathering pieces of many different stories without realizing it. The entire village has become her memory. One afternoon, a worried mother quietly invites her inside for tea. Her daughter has reached the age when many young women begin thinking about marriage. The family hopes to find someone honest, someone dependable, not necessarily wealthy. Although that would certainly help, the matchmaker listens patiently. She asks gentle questions. Does the daughter enjoy working outdoors? Can she read a little? Does she prefer a quiet household? Has she shown interest in anyone already? These conversations are calm, respectful, never hurried, because choosing a marriage partner could shape the rest of someone's life. There was no room for careless decisions. Later that same week, the matchmaker visits another family. Their eldest son has become a skilled carpenter. His furniture is admired throughout nearby villages. He works hard, rarely wastes money, attends church regularly. His parents quietly wonder whether the time has come for him to marry again. The matchmaker listens. She smiles thoughtfully, without making any promises. She begins connecting small pieces together. Perhaps these two families would suit one another, perhaps not. The decision would require patience. One of the greatest misunderstandings about medieval matchmaking is the belief that people never had any choice at all. While some marriages, especially among wealthy nobles, were arranged with little personal freedom, many ordinary villagers still expressed opinions. Parents often preferred cooperation rather than complete force. A deeply unhappy marriage could create problems for two entire families. Peace within the household mattered. Harmony made daily life easier. Love was appreciated. Even if practical concerns often came first, sometimes young couples quietly hoped the matchmaker would notice their growing affection. A respectful glance during church, a conversation during harvest, a shared walk after a village celebration. These small moments rarely escaped experienced eyes. Older generations often noticed far more than young people imagined. Another fascinating tradition involved community celebrations, harvest festivals, spring fairs, religious feast days. These events brought together people from neighboring villages who might otherwise never meet. Colorful tents filled open fields. Merchants displayed woven cloth, pottery, spices, and handmade tools. Musicians played cheerful melodies while children laughed nearby. These festivals created rare opportunities, not only for buying and selling, but for meeting someone new. Families understood this. They dressed in their best clothing. Young men polished their boots. Young women carefully arranged ribbons beneath simple linen veils. Everyone hoped to make a good impression, not through grand speeches, but through quiet courtesy. Imagine standing beside a wooden bridge overlooking a slow-moving stream. The afternoon sun shines warmly across the water. A traveling musician begins playing a gentle melody on a small harp. People gradually gather nearby, among them. Two strangers exchange polite smiles. Neither knows the other's name. Their families begin talking instead. Simple introductions become friendly conversations. Sometimes, that was all it took for an entirely new chapter of life to begin, of course. Not every meeting led to marriage. Many simply became pleasant memories. Others ended after families discovered practical difficulties. Perhaps the villages were too far apart. Perhaps one family planned to move. Perhaps responsibilities at home made marriage impossible for several more years. Life rarely followed perfect stories, yet hope remained. Hope always remained. One curious custom involved observing how someone behaved while working, instead of asking endless questions. People often watched quietly. Was the young man respectful toward older neighbors? Did he help repair fences after storms? Did he care for tired horses with patience? Was the young woman generous toward younger children? Did she treat visitors kindly? Could she remain calm during difficult seasons? Character revealed itself through ordinary actions, in many ways. Daily life became the longest conversation anyone could have. Words mattered, actions mattered even more. Perhaps this explains why medieval advice often focused less on clever compliments and more on dependable behavior. A person known for honesty slowly earned trust. A person known for kindness became respected. Reputation spread naturally, long before newspapers, long before photographs, long before social media. Character itself became the greatest introduction. As evening approached, families slowly packed their baskets. Merchants folded colorful fabrics. Children grew sleepy after long days of excitement. Smoke once again rose from village chimneys. The roads filled with wagons returning home beneath soft golden sunsets. Some travelers carried new tools. Others carried fresh supplies, and a few quietly carried something impossible to place inside any basket: hope. Perhaps they had met someone interesting. Perhaps a polite conversation would continue during the next festival. Perhaps nothing would happen at all. History often leaves those questions unanswered. Yet that uncertainty makes these forgotten lives feel wonderfully human. As our peaceful journey continues, the stars begin appearing above the quiet countryside. Owls glide silently across open fields. The cool night air settles over stone cottages, inside warm homes. Families gather beside fatting fires. Stories are shared. Bread is divided. Tomorrow's work is discussed. Life continues at its familiar, comforting rhythm. But hidden within castles, far beyond these peaceful villages, the rules of romance became even stranger. Noble families followed customs unlike anything ordinary people experienced. Their marriages involved kingdoms, politics, power, and astonishing traditions that shaped the future of Europe itself. Those remarkable stories. Wait quietly for us in the next chapter of our journey through the sleeping past. As we continue our peaceful journey, the village has disappeared behind us. The narrow country roads slowly give way to wide stone paths leading toward towering castle walls. The moon hangs quietly above the countryside, bathing everything in a soft silver glow. A gentle mist settles over the fields. The wind whispers through ancient trees that have stood here for centuries. Somewhere in the distance, the faint sound of a guard's footsteps echoes across the castle courtyard. Everything else remains wonderfully still. If you are beginning to drift towards sleep, simply let these stories become part of the quiet background of your dreams. There is no need to stay fully awake. Tonight, we leave behind the lives of ordinary villagers and step into the world of kings, queens, princes, and noble families. At first glance, it might seem that life inside a castle was filled with romance. Magnificent feasts, elegant clothing, grand celebrations, and endless luxury. But the truth was often much quieter and far more complicated. For noble families, marriage was rarely only about love. It was about power, land, peace, wealth, and sometimes the future of entire kingdoms. Imagine being 16 years old. You live inside a great stone castle overlooking green valleys and winding rivers. You have servants preparing your meals. Musicians perform during evening banquets. Beautiful tapestries decorate the walls from the outside. Everything appears perfect. Yet one morning, your parents gently inform you that your future husband lives hundreds of miles away. You have never met him. Perhaps you have only seen a painted portrait. Perhaps you know nothing about his personality, his laugh, his dreams, his fears. Yet within a few months, you may spend the rest of your life together. This was not unusual among noble families. Across medieval Europe, marriages often became political agreements. A single wedding could end years of conflict between neighboring kingdoms. It could strengthen military alliances, protect important trade routes, or unite powerful families. Sometimes, the happiness of two individuals mattered far less than the stability of thousands of people. History reminds us that personal wishes were often balanced against much larger responsibilities. Of course, not every arranged marriage was unhappy. Some couples slowly developed genuine affection, living together through changing seasons, facing hardships, raising children, and sharing responsibilities often created deep respect. Letters written centuries ago occasionally reveal surprising tenderness between royal husbands and wives, kind words, gentle concern, quiet companionship, even within political marriages. Love sometimes found its own path, but uncertainty always remained. Imagine a young noblewoman standing beside a tall castle window. Outside, snow covers the gardens below. Messengers arrive on horseback carrying sealed letters. Every letter might contain important news: a marriage proposal, a change in political alliances, or unexpected delays. Life inside a castle often depended upon messages arriving from distant lands. Days passed slowly. Waiting became an ordinary part of life. One fascinating custom involved portraits. Today we simply exchange photographs within seconds, but during the Middle Ages, a painted portrait might become the very first glimpse of a future husband or wife. Artists carefully painted noble faces using expensive pigments. They tried to present their subjects in the best possible light. smooth skin, rich clothing, calm expressions, naturally. These portraits were not always completely accurate. Some artists quietly ignored small imperfections, others emphasized beauty, occasionally. A future bride or groom arrived only to discover the real person looked rather different from the painting. History records more than one polite surprise. Another curious tradition involved symbolic gifts exchanged before marriage, rather than expensive jewelry alone. Families often presented beautifully decorated books, religious objects, fine fabrics, carved ivory boxes, or carefully embroidered gloves. Every gift carried meaning. Every detail reflected respect. Receiving such gifts signaled the beginning of an important relationship between two households. In many castles, courtly manners became almost an art form. Young nobles learned exactly how to bow, how to greet visitors, how to speak politely, how to behave during formal meals. Good manners were considered signs of good character. Even small mistakes attracted attention. Imagine entering a magnificent dining hall. Hundreds of candles illuminate long wooden tables. Silver cups reflect warm golden light. Musicians quietly perform near the far wall. Servants move silently between guests. Conversation remains calm and respectful. Every movement follows invisible rules understood by everyone present. A careless interruption, speaking too loudly, or forgetting proper greetings, could leave a lasting impression. Reputation traveled quickly among noble families. One of the most famous medieval ideas surrounding romance became known as courtly love. Today, historians continue debating exactly how common it truly was. Many poems celebrated noble knights expressing deep admiration for elegant ladies. These stories spoke of loyalty, honor, patience, and devotion. Sometimes the relationships described in poems were symbolic rather than practical. The writers celebrated ideal behavior more than everyday reality. Yet these stories became enormously popular. Traveling poets carried them across Europe. Musicians sang them during royal celebrations. Young nobles listened carefully. Some hoped to imitate the honorable heroes they admired. Others simply enjoyed the beautiful storytelling, whether entirely real or partly imagined. Courtly love shaped medieval ideas about romance for generations. One knight might spend months proving his courage before speaking openly about his feelings, not through dramatic speeches, but through respectful actions, helping others, keeping promises, showing humility. The journey toward affection was expected to require patience. Perhaps there is something quietly timeless about that idea. As the years passed, royal weddings became magnificent public celebrations. Colorful banners decorated castle towers. Church bells rang across entire towns. Tables overflowed with bread, roasted meats, fresh fruits, and sweet honey cakes. Musicians played for hours. Guests traveled from distant lands. The celebrations sometimes lasted several days, yet behind the joyful atmosphere, political discussions quietly continued. Future alliances were planned. Land agreements were confirmed. Diplomats met in private rooms. A wedding could change the course of history for ordinary villagers. Marriage changed one family for kings and queens. Marriage sometimes changed nations still. Even inside enormous castles, people remained human. Young brides felt nervous. Young grooms wondered about the future. Parents worried. Children laughed. Friends shared quiet conversations beside warm fireplaces, beneath magnificent clothing. Every heartbeat sounded exactly the same. History often reminds us that titles cannot erase ordinary emotions. As midnight slowly approaches, the great castle begins growing quieter. The final musicians set aside their instruments. Servants extinguish candles one by one. The enormous halls fall into peaceful silence. Only the steady footsteps of night guards continue across the stone walls. Far below, the villages sleep peacefully beneath the same moon, rich and poor alike. Everyone dreams beneath the same stars. Yet our journey through medieval romance is not quite complete. One final chapter still waits ahead. A chapter filled with forgotten wedding traditions, curious beliefs about married life, and surprising customs that marked the beginning of a new family. Those gentle stories will bring our quiet journey to its peaceful conclusion. In the final chapter of tonight's tale, the night has grown wonderfully quiet. The stars shine gently above the old castles. The peaceful villages, the winding rivers, and the silent forests that have watched over countless generations. Our journey through the Middle Ages is slowly coming to an end. For the past few hours, we have wandered through forgotten streets where flickering candlelight danced across stone walls. We have stood beside ancient churches while bells echoed through cool evening air. We have visited lively marketplaces filled with laughter, music, and quiet conversations. We have watched young hearts searching for love in a world that followed very different rules from our own. Along the way, we discovered that medieval dating advice was often a fascinating mixture of wisdom, tradition, faith, hope, and mystery. Some people carried rosemary, believing it would encourage faithful love. Others searched for hidden messages inside dreams. Young men carefully polished their boots before village festivals. Young women embroidered thoughtful gifts that required weeks of patient work. Families quietly observed every conversation. Matchmakers gently connected households. Kings and queens entered marriages that shaped entire kingdoms. Every custom, no matter how unusual it seems today, made perfect sense to someone living hundreds of years ago. History has a remarkable way of reminding us that every generation believes its own traditions are perfectly ordinary. Perhaps one day, hundreds of years from now, people will look back at our own lives with the very same curiosity. They may wonder about smartphones, dating apps, social media, online messages, video calls, or first dates in busy coffee shops. They may smile at our customs, just as we have smiled at those of the medieval world. That is one of history's quiet gifts. It teaches us not to judge too quickly. Instead, it invites us to understand, because beneath every tradition, no matter how strange, were ordinary people simply trying to build happy lives. They worried about tomorrow, they hoped for kindness, they searched for friendship, they dreamed of peaceful homes, they laughed, they made mistakes, they fell in love, and sometimes they had their hearts broken. Across 700 years, those feelings have changed very little. The clothes are different, the buildings are different, the languages sound different, but the human heart remains surprisingly familiar. Perhaps that is why these quiet stories continue to comfort us today. As you rest beneath your blankets, imagine one final peaceful walk through the sleeping village. The narrow stone road stretches gently ahead. Small cottages rest beneath the moonlight. A single candle still glows inside one distant window. The smell of fresh bread lingers softly in the cool night air, somewhere nearby. An owl calls from the branches of an old oak tree. A gentle breeze moves through fields of wildflowers. The world feels calm, safe, unhurried behind you. The marketplace has fallen completely silent. The castle gates stand peacefully closed. The village well reflects tiny stars upon still water. Tomorrow morning, the baker will rise before sunrise. The blacksmith will light his forge once again. Farmers will walk into green fields. Children will laugh in quiet village lanes. Life will continue, just as it has for countless generations, and somewhere, two young people may exchange a shy smile for the very first time, beginning another ordinary story that history will quietly carry forward. If sleep has already begun to find you, then simply let these final words drift gently into the background. There is nothing more you need to do tonight, no questions to answer, no places to go. Only the quiet comfort of knowing that these forgotten stories will always be waiting whenever you wish to return. Thank you for spending this peaceful evening with me, whether you listened to every word or drifted softly to sleep somewhere along the way. I'm truly grateful you chose to share this quiet journey through history. If you enjoy slow, relaxing stories from the past and would like to explore more forgotten worlds together, you are always welcome here. Please consider subscribing to Sleepy History so you won't miss our next peaceful adventure through time. There are still countless forgotten castles, ancient civilizations, quiet villages, curious traditions, and remarkable people waiting patiently for us to discover them. Until then, may your night be peaceful, may your dreams be gentle, may tomorrow greet you with calmness and quiet joy. This is Kushi, wishing you a restful night, sleep well, and goodbye for now.